Come on in, welcome to my home. You have the right to say no. Honestly, you have the right just to say no without any excuses, without any explanations. It is your right to tell someone no. But yet, we always question the fact that people are having a hard time saying no. Well, why is that? Can you do that for me? Part of the reason you're having a hard time saying no is that you were taught from a very, very young age not to say no. In fact, people tell kids all the time, don't say no, because, there's a phase where little kids go through the time where they say no constantly. And we work to get it out of their system so that they don't say no. And then we wonder why people have a hard time saying no. We question ourselves why we have a hard time saying no. We question ourselves why we have this urge to not just say no, but to give some sort of explanation, like an explanation is deserved. Can you do that for me? Oh, I'm sorry. I can't right now. Well, why not? Because I need to do what I need to get done. If you choose to give an explanation or not give an explanation as to why you said no to something, that's completely your choice. Completely your choice. It could be your upbringing, it could be the need of the situation, but a lot of people think that saying no will damage a relationship. Well, if your relationship is so fragile that you're saying no on something will totally damage your relationship is pretty darn fragile. Do you have to give an explanation? No. Is it polite? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Because sometimes we find ourselves having to lie for an explanation because we don't want to go into the details of what the actual reason that we said no was. Can you do that for me? I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. Well, why not? I'm having explosive diarrhea. And realistically, we shouldn't have to. Realistically, you don't have to justify yourself because a lot of times you are saying no because you need to say no. It can be anything from mental health reasons to actual time reasons to, I don't know. There are lots and lots of reasons. And then the other question is, well, why do you need to explain yourself? How often do people ask, can you do that for me? Yes, I can do that for you. Well, why yes? Then you have to think about the answer. Because it's going to benefit me more than it's going to benefit you, and I'm going to exploit you for whatever I can while I'm doing the thing that you asked me to do. I find that really strange, because if you're doing something to help people, they don't question why you're doing it. No one even thinks twice about it. But if you don't do something which they think will benefit them, then they want an explanation as to why you're not doing something to benefit them. Well, okay, but sometimes I shouldn't have to give you an answer. My life could be so messed up that I don't want to give you an answer. I'm so embarrassed about what's happening. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But do you really want to push it that far? Do you really want to push it to the point where somebody is so uncomfortable about saying yes or no about something that they would go into the honest, embarrassing answer? Or would you rather push them into lying to you? It is okay to say no. No is one of those things which you might be protecting yourself or protecting other people by saying no. And we need to stop this whole, you can't say no, or, don't say no to this person because they're family or they're whatever. Sometimes it just needs to be said for their sake and for yours. Down below in the description, there are some links to some resources that will help you on how to say no and when to say no. And most of the resources will show you polite ways to say no. Or when you really do need to think about, is this going to be detrimental to yourself? Because those situations will arise where saying yes could be very, very detrimental to you. Or it could be detrimental to somebody else. Do not always feel that just because you are related to the person or you're the best friends with the person that yes is the best answer, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it can be really, really hard to say no to somebody. And like I said, there are links down below in the description about that, simply because, I mean, I can tell you what I've experienced in my life, but I can't give you the professional help that others can. There are people who have all sorts of resources that can help you with this whole saying no, because it can be very, very difficult. But you really need to protect yourself, because what I've found out is, like, a lot of times people aren't even realizing that they're hurting you by asking you a question that you really need to say no to, asking you to do something that you really just don't have the time for. I've been asked to do things where it's the infamous, well, can you do this while you're also doing what else you need to do? And a lot of times it's like, well, the problem is I am still doing what I need to do, and then I'm supposed to be doing what you want me to do on top of that, and there just isn't the time of day. There's just isn't the time enough to do that, or there isn't the time enough to do that efficiently or well, or a mixture of all of those things. And that is something to think about. Why is the person asking you to do it? A lot of times you have to think about, are they just asking you to do it because they just don't want to do it, and they feel that in their mind you have nothing better to do than to do that thing. And if you do have better things to do, or things that are really pressing or very important, or things that you do not need to justify to them, then your answer is no. Don't be forced into doing something which you know is bad for you, because in the end, you're going to be the one who's going to have to look out for you. Not always is somebody doing something in your best interest, and you have to look at that. Just because you are related to them or they've been your best friend doesn't always mean that they're operating in your best interest. So saying no can protect both you and them. I've found that this has been really hard, especially when I'm asked to do things which don't seem hard to the person who's asking me. There are lots of times when, especially now with Mom not being able to do some things, where she'll ask me to do some things like extra people are coming in or that sort of thing, and she's like, well, can you do this for me? And it's just like, well, and she's like, well, I do it all the time and it's not that big of a deal, and that is true. But when you also add into it what I also still have to do, my stuff still needs to get done. I've done that video. How do you expect that to get done? You can check that out. I'm sure I linked it somewhere. Then it becomes one of those, well, hey, how am I supposed to get my stuff done? And that's when you suddenly notice something. The infamous, well, you could just stay up later, or you can, it's just like, well, no. And then there are other little things, like where the no comes into the whole, I don't have the money to do it. A lot of times you will get people to ask you to go places or do an adventure with them, and it's just like, well, you have the money for that, I don't have the money for that. Am I allocating these things? But it's still one of those things where, do I need to justify myself to you? A lot of times the answer is no, but we do it because we want to make sure that we don't damage those relationships beyond repair because of guilt. I hope, and I'm sure I'm guilty of this, that I've done that, where I've been like, well, can you do this somebody, and somebody tells, can you do this for me, and somebody says no, and I ask them why, versus the whole, well, okay, you can't do that, that's fine, it shouldn't affect us in any way, because hopefully I'm not asking you for something that would be so damaging that it would be a, all or nothing kind of situation, or if it were, hopefully it would be something that that person would be willing to do. But I'm sure I've done some horrible things where I've asked people to do something and then gotten mad because they didn't do it, and I apologize for that, but it is human nature, so be prepared for this. But it is okay to say no, and it's okay for your friends and family to tell you no. No's important. No is really out there to protect you and them. And that's what, more than anything else I want to get across to you in this video, is the whole no is so super important. Especially now if you're caretaking for somebody, or if you're getting care, or those sort of things. Also, don't put your caretaker into a situation where you know it's going to be overwhelming for them, or the situation where they can't say no, because they might just have to say no. Well, can you do this for so-and-so because she has no one else to do this? Well, no. No, I can't. And there are lots and lots of reasons, and maybe I should have to justify them, maybe I shouldn't have to justify them, but I shouldn't feel guilty when I know that I can't do it. Because a lot of times the person who's asking you knows that you can't do it also. And they're sort of taking advantage of you, and that's sort of sad. But that's not always the case. And when somebody tells you no, just believe them. Don't ask for justifications. I know this sounds like it's repeating itself, but this is so important. So important that you honor no. You say no when you need to say no, and people listen to it and they accept no when they need to accept no. I can't help you with the whole when is that going to be? I don't know. You'll figure that part out. But have you ever been in a situation where somebody's asked you to do something and you've said no, and you really had to say no, and then you had to justify it? Let me know down in the comments. Or have you been the opposite, where you've asked somebody to say no, to do something, and they said no, and then you made them feel guilty? Might be a good time for you to apologize for that. Let me know what you think about that down in the comments, and I hope I get to see you the next time you stop by.